So on behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we welcome everyone. I'm going to lateral over to Stacy Brown, our senior correspondent for the NNPA and for blackpressusa.com. The whole purpose of our gathering for this particular webinar during our national virtual convention this year is to discuss the future of the Black press. This year, we're celebrating the 193rd year of the Black press of America since 1827, when Freedom's Journal was first published. It's also the 80th anniversary of the NNPA, 80 years since 1940 to 2020, where we've been on the front line of the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality. And today we have the distinguished publisher of the Dayton Defender, John Michelle Kearney, and who's also the president of Region 3, and also she's affiliated with the Cincinnati Herald. Yes, absolutely. John Michelle, a pleasure to have you. We also have distinguished publisher of the Mississippi Link down in Jackson, Mississippi, Jackie Hamilton, who's also the national secretary of the NNPA. And we're pleased to have the publisher of one of the iconic brands in the NNPA, the AFRO, the Afro-American, Dr. Francis Draper, who's the publisher of the AFRO, as well as the Washington AFRO. And we're very pleased to have Dr. Draper also to join us. And then we have the distinguished editor of the Washington Informer, Kevin McNair, has been around several of our newspapers. And I thought it was good to have him on, because if there's anybody that has a sort of a perspective from Florida to Michigan to Washington, D.C., is Kevin McNair. So Kevin, thank you for also joining us. And then Mark Thompson grew up in the Black press, has been in television, radio, social media. He now is the producer of Make It Plain. And every Friday on Make It Plain, we have something called Meet the Black Press. Mark is also frequent on MSNBC, as well as other national networks. So Mark Thompson, thank you so much for joining us as we discuss the future of the Black press.
Thank you, Ben.
Mr. Brown, I'm putting this distinguished panel in your hands. So over the next hour, we can discuss the future of the Black press with insights and reflections, not only for all of our publishers, but for the thousands of people who are watching virtually the NNPA virtual convention. Stacy Brown.
Thank you, Dr. Chavis, our distinguished president and CEO. Also like to thank Karen Carter-Richards, our chair, for this panel. This is the Future of the Black Press panel, and this is the NNPA, our 80th anniversary and the 193rd year of the Black press. I want to start with Kevin McNair. Kevin has done a tremendous job with the Washington Informer, one of our preeminent papers down in DC. Kevin recently spearheaded the Washington Informer and helping that paper receive a number of Society of Professional Journalists awards. Kevin, so the topic is the future of the Black press. You've been around, like as Dr. Chavis mentioned, Miami, Michigan, and nation's capital now. What is the future of the Black press from your perspective, Kevin?
Well, the future of the Black press is what it's always been. You know, we tell stories that mainstream publications don't tell. And we tell it in a way that shows that we care about people, that we know them. You know, in terms of the Society of Professional Journalists, I just thought it was time that we showed the larger scale folks that we do the same kind of work, if not more than they do. And we were blessed to be able to pick up 5 awards for that. That was a celebration for all of us, you included, Stacy. But you know, I've been with the Black press 25 years, Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, and now Washington, D.C. And I just believe that we have a story that is unique, that's significant. It has not gotten old. As a matter of fact, the Washington Post just announced 12 positions of editors they're going to bring on to talk, give the Black story. We give the Black story. That's who we are, across the board, all over the country. And we're doing a tremendous job. Whether you're large or small, we do the same thing. And I support it, and I'm proud to be a part of this team.
Yeah, and Kevin, you are well traveled, but we're glad that you have let your feet cool a little bit in Washington, D.C. And I want to talk
Yeah.
to your neighbor there from the great AFRO newspaper, Dr. Toni Draper. Dr. Draper, how, Kevin mentioned some things about what the Washington Post is doing. They're trying to hire a lot of African Americans for certain coverage now, ever since the George Floyd situation has shed light on the disparities that has always been there. But how important, Dr. Draper, is it that when we do tell our stories, we make sure we own it?
Thanks for the question, Stacy. It is important that we own it. We are a trusted source, and so that's what makes us different, I think, from other so-called mainstream media. We are mainstream in our own communities, and so when I say a trusted source, I'm not just saying that lightly. I can give a couple of examples. Even recently, you may have seen the national story on the discrimination or the alleged discrimination, racism against a 9-year-old boy and his mom who were refused seating at a restaurant in a very nice part of Baltimore. And that story went viral. The mom and son were on Good Morning America and on other national platforms. But we are the ones, the AFRO is the one that broke the story about the racism that's always been in, I shouldn't say always, that's too broad of a word, but that has been in that restaurant chain long before that time. And so some of the former employees felt comfortable talking with us because they knew that we would get the story accurate. Or take, for example, unfortunately, our mayor resigned in disgrace and was sentenced to serve 3 years in federal prison. But when she resigned as the mayor of Baltimore City, the AFRO had the story first. So she actually called me and said, I'm going to do this afternoon. I want you to have it first because I trust that the AFRO will put the story in accurately. And we did. And then CNN and others called us and said, is that true? Did you really? So I didn't even dignify that with an answer, but we are a trusted medium. And then when she left for prison last Friday, she called me and she said, I want to make a statement. So when the other papers just said she went to prison in Alabama, we had the story that said, this is what Catherine Pugh said to us before she went, and because she knew that we would do a fair representation and accurate reporting. And so I think that's what really distinguishes the Black press.
Yeah, and it's a great point. Dr. Draper, I've heard you tell that story before. In fact, one better, I've read the story, right, in the AFRO about the mayor in Baltimore City and that situation. But what's interesting, Dr. Draper, what you said about other CNN and others calling you and saying, is that true? As if the Black press could not get such a story. We went through the same thing, and Dr. Chavis, he could tell you, we went through the same thing with Bill Cosby when we interviewed him from prison. Just about every outlet in the world, not just in the country, picked it up, but then they were skeptical. We had an audio that we played of Mr. Cosby with the interview, and USA Today, in an attempt to discredit us, said that they wrote that we said in the interview that we were supporting Bill Cosby, and we said, well, listen to the tape again. So they had to do a retraction because we demanded that you give us a retraction. So this is what they try to do to the Black press. I want to go out to Cincinnati. Last year, we were in Cincinnati for the convention there, and it was one of our best conferences that we've had, and that was in large part thanks to Jan Michelle Kearney of the Cincinnati Herald. Welcome, Jan Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. I was going to say in large part due to our whole team, and our team in Cincinnati worked really hard. Thank you for all the work you're doing and all of you. So my take on the Black press is we are stronger than ever and we're needed more than ever. We've been at this since 1827. And, we might be flavor of the day. The protests are going on. It's mainly our kids who are out there protesting, our young people. And so people, they suddenly want to, let's see what Black folks are doing. Let's see what Black folks are thinking. We've been doing this since 1827. We don't just pop up and pop out when it's popular, when it's convenient. We are here day in and day out, representing the voices, the many, many different divergent voices of Black people in this country and really all over the world. So I'm really proud of the work that the Black press does. I think what's being highlighted now is how important we are, how important the Black press really is, because we've been at this for a long time. We are, you know, as Dr. Draper said, a trusted source, and we are not here because it's popular today. We're always here day in and day out for Black folks. We advocate and we make sure that we get to tell our own story. And I want to say, you know, what Kevin was saying about these other sources hiring Black reporters. I'm so happy for that, because all these newsrooms need diversity. But I just want to point out to the public, you also have to look at who's at the corporate table, who's making decisions, who's owning it. And when you get to the Black press, we're the ones owning it. We're making those decisions. And so that's very important. Consider the source, and we are the trusted source.
And Jan Michelle, I understand that you just got elected to a position. Can you tell us
Yes, now I'm really excited to represent Region 3. We've got 8 states in the National Newspaper Publishers Association, 54 publishers, going toward 2 million readers. So we are doing really well in Region 3, and we're excited about the convention that's going to happen this coming week.
And you know what, we talk a lot about politics as well. Obviously, we cover a lot of politics. The Black press is not just, we're not just putting out news and information, are we? We're also serving. Jan Michelle also serves in Cincinnati on the city council.
That's right. Yeah, I was appointed. I'm really honored. I was appointed in mid-March, around the time that COVID struck Ohio. I was already kind of creeping up around the nation, and it started getting really serious here in Ohio about that time. And then soon after that, you know, the murder of George Floyd sparked the protests. So we've had a lot going on here in Ohio and in Cincinnati. But, you know, what better time to serve than, you know, when service is needed. So I'm really honored to serve the people of our area here.
Yeah, great. And, you know, people ask me often about my experience with the Black press. And I always tell them I have a lot of favorites. I have a lot of favorite people in the Black press. And one of those, among the top, is Jackie Hampton out in Virginia. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you. We're doing well here in Mississippi. A lot is going on.
Yeah, I said Virginia, didn't I?
You did. That's okay. That's okay.
But Jackie,
I know the similarities.
Jackie, the future of the Black press, how do you see it?
I agree with the other publishers. The future of the Black press is bright and more needed than ever before. When the Black press started years and years and years ago, we needed to be able to tell our own stories. And so over the years, we've had that opportunity to tell our stories. We've had the opportunity to tell many, many positive stories that were not told in the past. Instead, the stories were about, for mainstream, the negative things that were going on in the Black community. So here at the Mississippi Link, we've always prided ourselves to be able to tell positive stories. But today, the climate has changed. We have to go back and we've got to tell the stories the way they are. Everybody knows that after 126 years, the Confederate flag of Mississippi was voted to come down. There have been a lot of different opinions on that flag, and this is not the first time lawmakers have tried to get rid of that flag, that emblem, that Confederate emblem. But finally, on last Sunday, it was voted for the flag to come down. And then on Tuesday, it actually did come down. But the story behind what did in fact happen is only being told. I won't say only being told, but we've got to tell that story. We've got to tell the story of how, rather than the lawmakers who fought year after year after year to remove that flag, did not have the opportunity to view the signing of the bill to get rid of that flag. Yeah. Instead, they were locked out of the governor's mansion, standing on the outside looking in. And that was so unfair for those that had worked so long and so hard to get that flag removed. So those are some of the inside stories that have to be told. Even though we are celebrating the removal of the Confederate emblem off the flag, we celebrated seeing the flag removed from the Capitol on Wednesday. We celebrated it being laid to rest at the Coliseum. I'm sorry, at the museum, at the State Museum, here in Jackson, the two museums. There are some great things that are going on and that are happening here in the state of Mississippi, but it's about time these things happen. And we have to tell the story, and we have to tell it with honesty and with truth. And we are that trusted source.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes on my Twitter feed and on the Black Press USA as well, I see the name Mark Thompson. And I see that he is doing some wonderful work, some great work. Mark Thompson, I am so glad that you have had the time to join us today. Mark, tell us a little bit about, first of all, about your show and about your connection with the Black Press and the future of the Black Press as you see it.
Well, Stacy, it's an honor to be with you and an honor to be with everyone here today once again. In terms of my history with the Black Press, I was born in Washington, D.C., but raised in Nashville. And when I graduated from high school to return to D.C. to go to college, the very first job I had as an adult in Washington, D.C. was the job that Dr. Draper's mom gave me, Frances Murphy, as a correspondent for the Washington Afro-American newspaper. And that'll always be sacred to me. You know, I've always been a part of several other Black newspapers, but it started at the AFRO. The Black Press is sacred. And I think that we are in a very important moment right now. As America goes through this racial reckoning, it's time for our people especially to return to our own institutions. Now, we're already seeing that in sports. 5-star center commits to Howard University. A football player leaves Cincinnati to go to Wake Forest. A basketball player leaves, to go to Arkansas Pine Bluff. A basketball player at Wake Forest leaves to go to Morgan State. And we're already even hearing about the possibility that LeBron's son may go to an HBCU. So as we are recommitting to our educational institutions, we must recommit and encourage our people to recommit to our information institution, and that's the Black Press. More than ever before, we need to talk about supporting Black businesses, and of course, the Black Press is one of those. Everything's changing. Hamilton premiered this weekend, and you know what? If Hamilton was premiering again in the way it came out several years ago, it couldn't premiere, because now everyone has been awakened as to the role that even Alexander Hamilton played in slavery, even though he spoke out against it. So the whole landscape has changed, and it might as well change in terms of our community's support and reliance on the Black Press as a primary source of information with so much other propaganda. You asked about my show. All I'll say is host Make It Plain, which is a daily podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. And again, it's such an honor to be here with all of the esteemed people here from around the country that everyone needs to know about and support their publications.
Well, thank you, Mark. Yes, make it plain. Kevin, I want to ask, well, I'm going to ask Kevin a question, but I want the publishers also to weigh in. Yeah. And Mark, you can jump in on this too, because I found it very interesting. Kevin took over the Washington Informer a few years ago as the executive editor, and Kevin pretty much, with the permission of Denise Rolock Barnes, the publisher makes basically all of the decisions at that newspaper as where stuff will run, how it will run. But Kevin made a decision. One of his first decisions was this: I'm not going to have a white person on the front page of my paper. President Trump will never appear on the front page of my paper. Now, he has also said that in the same way that you see the perp walks when there's an African-American suspect, well, he would consider putting white folks on the front page in that scenario. Kevin, can you talk about that a little bit? And I would love for Jackie Hampton down in Mississippi, Dr. Draper of the AFRO, Jan Michelle Kearney in Cincinnati, and Mark Thompson as well would make it plain to weigh in. But Kevin, I want you to take the lead there.
Well, look, I learned about the black press from Detroit and Sam Logan at the Michigan Chronicle. That was my first job. Mr. Logan was an amazing brother. As I moved through the cities and different places, when I got to Miami, the Reeves family told me the same thing. And I'm just an advocate. You know, so many times you put criminals on as if we don't have another story. And it's not that we don't do some bad things. I don't say that. But I'm not going to participate in perpetuating the message that black folk are less than, that we are inadequate, that we don't come to the table prepared. And so that's why I made the decision I'm not going to put any of those kind of stories on our front page. Now, similarly, I don't put white folk on the front page because there are too many black stories that have not been told. And they're powerful stories, positive stories. And once I get all those told, then I'll put some white folk on. But for right now, I got so many stories I got to tell. I got another 10, 15, 20, 30 years before I can put somebody on, because they'll be on all the other publications as if they are the gatekeepers, when in fact, we're the gatekeepers of the real message. And that's just what I'm committed to. Denise has let me do my thing, and I appreciate that. And my staff, like you, part of my staff have been supportive of it. That's just where I am. You know, I'm unapologetically black from Detroit to Chicago to Atlanta to Miami and all the way back to Alabama with my family. And so I'm going to stay there. I'm in my lane because that's where I'm most comfortable. I'm not trying to get out of my lane. I'm going to be responsible to giving quality stories to people who deserve to know that we are the messengers. And that's, I'm not going to hide it. That's
well,
it.
Our founders.
Look at me.
Yeah, Kevin. Well, Kevin, our founders, right? Rushworm and Kearney said what? At Freedom's Journal, we wish to plead our own cause for too long. Others
Plead
have
our own
spoken
cause all day long. Yeah.
So Jackie, you seem like you're ready to jump in there on Kevin. So
I
go
saw
right
Jackie.
ahead.
Look
Let him
at
have
me.
it.
Am I okay, Jackie?
Kevin, I agree with you 150%. And I've had those feelings for a long time. We've had those feelings
Yes,
since the Mississippi. It was so strange when I looked at our June 18th paper and our June 25th paper, and we did, in fact, have whites on our cover. But the whites that were on our cover were the officers that killed George Floyd and Arbery. So when I passed by our counter that our papers are lined up on, and I look at those papers, I always take a second look. I said, that's a different look, because we have not in the past, like you, Kevin, had white on our cover. But this time, in fact, just like we were treated by mainstream, we made it a point to put those officers on our front page, top half of the paper. And that's what we, must do. We have to tell the entire story, but it's not about the negative things that we do. What about the negative things that they do to us? And so in that particular case, our paper, those 2 weeks had a different look. But you better believe that our purpose is to make, we are telling our stories, and we continue to tell our positive stories, all of the things that are going on. But at the same time, with the climate today, we may have some different photos on our cover. We did take off the cover. It was there for a moment. We had our governor actually signing that bill. At first, we had that on our cover, but at the last minute, we took that off. because that bill was, the lawmakers were not treated fairly in that case. So we could not even put the signing of that bill on our cover, even though that was history for Mississippi. So I'm with you, Kevin.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Thank you.
Look, let me jump in here for a minute. Kevin, we're with you as well. And let me just say, we don't put Donald Trump on the front of our cover because he's white. We choose not to put Donald Trump on the front of our cover because he is racist. He is not one who has supported African Americans. He's one who lies over and over again. I just can't understand, y'all. Somebody's gonna have to help me out with those who are supporting Trump. I mean, really. And I think, and one of our really don't even like to put his name there, but one of our primary focuses between now and November is to get Donald Trump out of the White House.
Yeah.
I mean, and so there's no shame in our game about that. And so, so he doesn't make the paper because, you know, it has nothing to do with his race. It has everything to do with his politics and how he has been so non-responsive, as well as how he has treated African Americans and women in particular. And we too, Jackie, don't feel bad. We had Derek Chauvin's picture on the front page, but it was his knee on George Floyd's neck.
Okay.
And yeah. So we had that picture as well.
There you go.
Okay, so in Cincinnati and Dayton, we first of all, as the Black press, our first job is to advocate for Black people. It is to tell the good news, and there's so much good news to tell. There's so many good stories to tell. So I totally agree with everybody on that. And no, we don't have Trump on the front page with anything positive. Now he might get there with, you know, with some of the crazy stuff he does, because we do want people to know the truth about him. I mean, he is definitely dangerous. But in terms of a policy against having white people on the front cover, no, we do not have that policy. But that hasn't prevented us from advocating for Black folks. And so if people are doing something positive, something that we feel is positive for our community, they can make it to the front page. So yeah, so they can make it to the front page. But our mission is to advocate for African Americans and to tell our story and to make sure that we present the many voices of the Black community. That's why we're here. And I would just wanted you all to see I pulled up another picture. That's this is City Hall, and now we have a mural in front of City Hall, Black Lives Matter, and it's beautiful. We unveiled it on June 19th, so it's pretty fantastic. I just wanted to point that out.
Oh, great. Well, we appreciate that, Michelle. Mark Thompson, I know you wanted to weigh in as well.
Well, just briefly, and that is a beautiful mural. Congratulations to you, Jackie Hampton, and all that struggled in Mississippi to bring that change down there. One other anecdote and I want to tie into this conversation. When I was in high school, my cousin was crowned University of Tennessee's first Black homecoming queen. This was like in the mid 80s. And so family drove from Nashville to Memphis to Knoxville, and they played Ole Miss. And at that time, the fight song at the University of Mississippi was still "I Wish I Was in Dixie." They waved that rotten on Confederate flag all over the football field.
Right.
Jackie, there were Black parents of Ole Miss football players dressed in Confederate uniforms with the gray and the whatnot. And I was like, oh my God, do these folk even know what they're doing? I bring that up to point out how far we've come in about 40 years.
Right.
But the problem still is, I think the challenge to all of us, and even more of a challenge to those of us who support you as publishers, is to remind our people every single day that the white man's ice is not colder. Now, a lot of friends of mine in journalism who work for white institutions before COVID, before George Floyd, were losing their jobs, right? And now all of a sudden, some of these white institutions, well, we want to hire Black people back to tell the story. Well, we never should have been let go in the first place. But you don't have that problem if people read and support the Black press to begin with. So, folks, the bottom line is we've got to send a strong message that it's time for readers, those who are seeking information, those who are seeking accurate news, to return home to the Black press.
I love that. You know, that is, I'm so glad you said that. You know, John Sinstack used to always say, I mean, that's like his famous quote, you know, people think the white man's ice is colder. I mean, we really have to work on that slave mentality and get rid of that, you know, because we're the Black press doesn't mean we're less than. I mean, we are the best journalists in the country. You know, we are definitely the trusted source, and people have to understand that. And they should be just as excited to get covered by our publications than they are to get covered by mainstream publications. In fact, they should be more excited to get covered by us, because if we cover you, that means you are really something, and we are promoting you. So we've got to change that mentality. I mean, everybody should have a subscription to all of our publications. You know, whatever city they're in, they should have a subscription to the Black newspaper.
Well, not only that, I mean, it used to be a time, and it probably still is, that the white newspapers would raid our newsrooms for talent. I mean, they weren't hiring, you know, and grooming Black journalists. If it was not for the Black press, there would have been no Black journalists, or hardly any Black journalists in the white newspapers. And so if the Washington Post, Kevin's going to hire 12, come stay out of my newsroom and yours, right?
Absolutely.
You're muted, Kevin. Kevin, you're muted.
Yeah. It's not that I have any issues with any other race, but again, I need to do what Du Bois did. We have the talented 10. Look, I'm a Michigan, Emory, and Princeton grad. And between my 3 senior writers, we have almost 100 years with the Black press. I'll be damned if I'm going to act like we can't tell the story in the same way that anyone else across the country. I give every paper in the Black, and that's what I'm going to do. And so to that end, you know, it's important that as we're telling that story, we're also telling stories of moms and grandmoms and people that never get any shine. I remember in Miami when Trayvon Martin died. His parents were not advocates. They were thrust in that, just like George Floyd's parents are. But they can talk to us and know they can trust us. And that's the difference. And, you know, I don't care what anyone else says. You know, when I was in Detroit, my parents had subscription to the Michigan Chronicle. We read that ugly green paper every week with Sam Logan. And as I moved across the country, what disheartens me is when I ask people, well, do you read the Black press? And they say, I don't know what it is. That's what we need to change, that mindset. Because if you don't know who your folk are and your message are,
right,
and so
you're
Kevin,
that's
lost.
right. That is so right.
Yeah, and as Jan Michelle was saying, you know, to your point, and we're talking about the future of the Black press, because Kevin, like you, I grew up in New York. My parents, my grandparents, aunts and uncles, you went to any of our houses. If you saw the New York Times on the table, the Amsterdam News was
That's right.
on top of that. We
On
looked
top.
to the Amsterdam News for anything that was pertaining to us. Jackie Hampton, I want to start with you on this question, Jackie.
Okay.
We know that we have to get it right more than anybody else. Mainstream can put a story out, they can write corrections or sensationalize. We are highly scrutinized. How important it is that we get it right, Jackie?
Oh, it is extremely important that we get it right, and we get it right the first time. That is something we pride ourselves on here at the Mississippi Link. Sometimes we're here late at night. We have a fabulous copy editor, and I'll be doggone if I leave earlier than they've gone to press. If they're still there at 11:30, she will call me. Her name is Minnie Garrett. She will call me and she will ask me. She will want to know the writer who may have submitted that story, what's their phone number? This doesn't sound right. I want to check that out. And oftentimes she was so correct in making sure we got it right, because there is a slim chance there might have been a name that was wrong by mistake, but it is so important that we get it right, and we get it right the first time. Very seldom, I could probably count on one hand in 15 years, the times we have to come back and say we made a mistake or change something we may have said. So it is very, very important. That's how we become the trusted source here at the Black Press and at the Mississippi Link, because we pride ourselves in getting it right, and we pride ourselves in getting it right the very first time, no matter how much work it takes. We've got to get it right, and we do so.
And you know what, I think we're held to a higher standard, I think, because our community expects more from us. And so any little mistake, like, we're going to hear about it, and we know it.
Right.
So our community expects a lot, and, you know, that's all right. That's all right. Hold us to that standard, because we will meet that standard.
Dr. Draper, how important it is for the Black press? Oh, let me put it this way. What else can the Black press do to help save Black lives? We're in the era of COVID-19. In addition to COVID-19, we talked about George Floyd, and Kevin talked about Trayvon Martin, and we can go on. You know, Michael Brown, et cetera, et cetera.
So that's a big question, Stacy Brown. There's a lot that the Black press is doing, and there are some things that I believe that we need to do just from a business perspective. So we are businesses. Yes, we are a trusted source. Yes, our content is needed. It's necessary in the times that we're living in. Our methods, however, I believe we could shift some of those to make sure that our message gets out to a broader and wider audience. And so with the technology that's there, and many of our papers already are, you know, they are very, very digital and, you know, online. And I'm not one that advocates for the printed paper to go away all together, but I am looking at the trends and looking at the audiences that we need to reach, because no longer, Stacy Brown, are we going into a home in New York and seeing the New York Times and the Amsterdam News. And we may be, but in most homes, even in my own home, I'm not seeing the hard copies of some of the papers that I like to follow. I am reading them online. And so that's a whole different discussion around how we really get that out there and how we come together to let people know that what we're doing is still so important, so relevant. But if nobody knows about it, if we're not marketing ourselves, if we're not keeping up with the trends, then it will give those who need to support us financially an excuse not to do that. And so I'm not for excuses, I'm for us moving forward, because we've got great papers. I mean, really, when I look at the products and the content, I mean, the publishers are on here, and so many more are doing great work. Really, we are, but we need to make sure that those who need to read it, regardless of the age. And so we get into this whole generational thing. It's not about generational, you know, the millennials do this and Gen Zs do this. We all need this information. Yeah. And we all need to work together to advocate. So it's one thing to put the information out there. It's another thing to say, okay, now that we have the information, who are we partnering with to make a difference and a change in our community? And I think no one can do it better than the Black press. And I want to say the Black free press.
Mark Thompson, feel free to jump right in, because we are talking about the future of Black press as well. That is the main thrust of where we're trying to get with this conversation, Mark.
Well, I agree with everything that Dr. Draper said. It's a new day in terms of the press overall. Now, I live here in New York, and the New York Times is struggling. As a lot of as a lot of newspapers in general are. As a matter of fact, I was reading a story. I have to go back and get that statistic, but I think it said that with the downsizing of daily newspapers altogether, that there's so few that a fifth or a sixth of all of the daily print reporters left in America work at the New York Times. And before this pandemic, you could drive down 8th Avenue and right past New York Times building, Stacy, and see folk walking out every Friday at 5 o'clock carrying boxes. Because what I don't think the print newspaper industry realized, and it's nobody's real fault, but when everything went on the internet and the product was being given away free, it's hard to come back 20 years later and say, especially if you're New York Times, and say, well, now you need to subscribe to our product, when people can get so much more information and better information and the same information from our perspective on our websites. So I agree with what Dr. Draper said. The online presentation always can continue to grow and improve. The social media as well. All of the papers here, all the black press newspapers, NNPA, need to be on Instagram, okay, like regularly, and churning out information and stories, because that's where a lot of young people, not just millennials anymore, are getting their information. So stepping up the social media game, stepping up the online game, and creating the urgency. And I would even say this, and we're going to try to do more on Meet the Black Press. And what we try to do on the show, on Make It Plain, is have several of you join us, and some of you have been on the show with us before, to highlight black publishers and black editors and black reporters that work on the black press. But you know what? You all can do that too. Each and every one of the newspapers in the NNPA should also be having a broadcast like this. One thing we've learned in the pandemic, everybody's learned how to do their own broadcast on Zoom and on social media. So Jackie and Jan and Brother McNair and Dr. Draper, some days y'all just need to go live on Instagram or live on Facebook with some of your reporters and talk about some of the stories and issues. And I know, Stacy, you do this all the time on behalf of NNPA in general. But that is so people can see and hear and touch and become even more acquainted, so that ultimately, again, the point I want to make is about returning home. I do have to do one thing, and also out of respect for another ancestor, as I mentioned, Dr. Draper's mother. In 1994, I was on the radio at WL. And that was the year of the first democratic elections in South Africa. So I needed to go, but I couldn't afford it. And there was no money to fly to South Africa. So Dr. Calvin Rolark at the Washington Informer bought my plane ticket to go to South Africa to cover the election, to not only broadcast live from South Africa on the radio during that historic time, but also to write a daily column in the Washington Informer newspaper. I never would have had that opportunity if it had not been for Dr. Rolark and the Informer, and to go there and then to meet the leadership of the ANC. That was an added bonus, and they even gave me my South African name that I still carry. So again, if it weren't for the black press, the experiences, and y'all, I go around white folk all the time. They say, "You went to South Africa?" Yeah, but that was because of the black press. White press didn't send me. The black press sent me. And so we need, once again, to return home.
Oh, I've got a Dr. Nelson Mandela story that I've got to just tell you real fast, because that Reverend Thompson, that was just beautiful. I'm just thinking about that, and that's how we support each other. But someone recently came up to me at a church and said, I was with a delegation of ministers and some others who went to South Africa, and I took the Cincinnati Herald with me, and Dr. Nelson Mandela read it. And so he said somewhere he's got a picture of Dr. Mandela with the Cincinnati Herald. I'm like, we have got to find that picture. That just, like, I was in tears when he told me that. But yeah, the black press is everywhere. That is wonderful. That is, yeah. I'm encouraged.
It is. And, Mark Thompson, I know Kevin is ready to jump in, because you mentioned something about these live streams. And I know that I watched just the other day, Kevin McNair and Denise Rolark Barnes was hosting their weekly live stream, Win TV. And you're right. the Black press, we need to be on these social medias. But to your point too, you mentioned Instagram, and my philosophy is this, and it's not just my philosophy, the numbers prove it. The kids, they do go to Facebook, they do go to Twitter, they go there, but they live on Instagram. Kevin, your win
Yeah.
daily?
So yeah, we have our Friday show, Win Daily, on several times. I mean, and I think the doc is right. You know, you have to expand your horizons, the way you reach out to people. Social media, certainly, but you know, we have baby boomers and beyond that, folk like us. We are people that like to hold stuff in our hands. And one of the things that's going to happen right now in the United States is people are living longer. And so I tell my people all the time, look, we can cut back on print, but when I go to them senior places, they're not trying to look online. I need to hand them something, and then I tell their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren or their nieces and nephews, check it out. So there are multiple ways we do it. You know, the Informer has gotten Facebook grants, as we all have, and Google grants. That's a lovely thing. But at the end of the day, we need to tell the story and tell it accurately. And we use as many platforms as possible. That's not going to change. But I remember 10 years ago, they said, print's going out of fashion, it's going to be done. We're not done. And we're not going to be done. It may change because the world changed. Everything must change. But we have a mission. I'm proud to be at the Informer. Denise does a wonderful job. She lets me do my thing. I support her. We support one another as long as we get the story done. And Stacy, by the way, it's almost 6 o'clock and I have a press time. So I know that the publishers that were about, I'm the editor. So I've got to yell my reporters right now, because if they don't have their stories, they don't get paid next week. So well, Kevin, I love them, but I got to double check.
Kevin, we definitely
thank you so much to all of you guys. I mean, I'm just proud to be in the number and to represent. I really am. I'm honored beyond belief, and I can't even say enough. I love the Black press. It's my heart. It's my soul. I'll be there until I die, and that's just the way it is, you know. So, Stacy, I gotta sign off now because I gotta click to the kid. But right, thank Kevin. You all. God bless you now. Jackie laughing. She knows what happened. Come on.
Kevin McNear, the editor of the Washington Informer.
Thank you so much. God bless.
We want to have more advocates. I'm sure I can speak for the publishers on that to say we want to have more advocates like Kevin McNear in the Black press. So what can we do, Dr. Draper, Jackie Hampton, and Jan Michelle Kearney, and Mark Thompson? What can we do to get more advocates to spread this great message to the younger ones?
So Stacy, I want to go back to something that Reverend Mark said, and that we've already talked about. We have great content. And so there are different ways to put that content out there. And I think that's what Mark was saying. I think that's what Kevin was saying. That's what I was saying. So let me give you a case in point. For example, most of us may have seen the Five Bloods, right? So we pursued Clark Peters, and we said, Clark Peters, give us an interview. And he did, but we did it live. You know, we live streamed that interview from London, and he was blown away. He didn't know us, and we knew him, of course, from his work. But what he said was, send me something that you've done already in video. Send me a sample of an interview that you've done. We were glad to do that, and so we sent that to him. And so, shameless plug, go back up on Facebook, you can watch it. But it was a wonderful interview with him, and now he's sending us all kinds of things because he's rediscovering the Black press. And so I think that we have great content. So I'm not advocating for anybody closing down their newspapers. Do what it is that works for you. What I'm advocating for is taking that content and spreading it across platforms. Instagram, Snapchat, if you got to make a TikTok, I don't care. Just get it out there in any kind of way we can get it out there. So that, and then the other thing I'm advocating for, you said, what can we do? Is for us to have a greater cooperation amongst ourselves so that I don't have to write the story out of Mississippi because Jackie has the story. and it's not an Associated Press story. It is a story that Jackie Hampton has that, you know, and we do that now, but to do more of that. So I can go to Cincinnati. I don't have to, you know, guess about that. Something happens in Cincinnati, something happens in Baltimore, something happens in Washington. We have a better utilization of that. I know we try to do that now with the Newswire, but just a little bit better to share that content with one another.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree. And Stacy, we've got to take our hat off to you, because you were covering so many stories, and we really depend on the Black Newswire, NMPA, also Tri-Sedney Newswire, because I mean the strong and powerful thing about the Black press is we have over 220 Black-owned newspapers across the country. So we're getting firsthand information from all of our connections all across the country. That is strong. There's a strong Black voice, and to have access to that really means a lot. I mean, that really means a lot for keeping our communities informed.
Yeah.
I
So,
agree with,
go ahead, Jackie. Yes.
I'm
please.
sorry, I was about to say, I agree with you both. I am so pleased that we do have a Stacy to cover all that he does. I do not know how he does it. But another thing we have to do, we have to invest in young people. This summer, we have hired as interns 2 college students, journalism majors. They are upcoming seniors. And when you think about social media and who is going to grow, who will grow our papers in the social media spectrum, it's the young people. So what I said, I gave our website to them, our online, our Instagram. You take that. In addition, yes, I do want you to write stories for our print edition, because our print editions, I do believe, will be here a very, very long time. We have so many subscribers that may not go online to read their papers, and they are looking for this hard copy. So I think the print edition is here to stay. But at the same time, if we invest in young people to do our social media, it will take us a long way, and they can take that to their college campuses, various college campuses, HBCUs, and get more people reading our papers online and in all the social media. I think that's the way we have to go as we broaden our spectrum, but at the same time, we have to keep the hard copy distributed to the many people that we are distributing it to. I don't ever plan to do away with it, but at the same time, we do have to grow online.
Yeah,
I agree.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, go ahead.
I should have mentioned, because I'm so excited about this, that we just hired a new assistant editor. She's 22 years old, just graduated from college. She interned for us when she first was entering college, and she was so phenomenal. But we've put her in charge of social media. So we already have a team that works on our website, and you know, we do something called the influencers on Facebook. It was on the radio, but the radio station isn't doing that during the pandemic. So we've got millennials doing this radio show, you know, twice a week. We've just got a lot going on. We have Lit 513 that's on YouTube. So people need to watch that. But we said we've got so much social media going on, we need someone to manage it. So we hired her as our assistant editor. We're putting her in charge of all of that. So she actually starts this week, so right in time for the convention. So her name is Camille Allen, and she is a superstar. You'll be hearing a lot about her. And we've got some wonderful interns working with us as well, some college students. So we're really, really excited about the future. But yeah, we're still going to do print. We're multimedia. So like all of us, you know, because our advertisers, you know, when we say, well, do you want to be online or in print? They want both. But when we have stories to tell, we'll tell people, well, the print issue is full. We'll put you on the website. They're like, no. We want to be in print too. So print is still very, very important. You all know there's a push to get in print, but we're multimedia like all of you. So everybody has to expand. We've got to work on social media, but we're going to hold on to the print.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful too, that you all are doing that. I was just going to say, I'm going to put my organizer's hat on for a minute. With all of the protests that are still taking place in many of our cities, those that are taking place now and those that are going to continue to happen. Because let's be honest, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and we just heard about a brother, Elijah McClain. We're going to see more of these incidents. In fact, I think Trump is encouraging these ongoing modern day lynchings to galvanize his base. But I think what every NNPA newspaper must do is that when there are the large gatherings in the local communities, to be sure that those gatherings are, and this is where the print is important, that those gatherings are flooded with print editions of the local Black newspaper. Everyone should be able to get a copy right there. And I would say, and this is going back old school again, the organizers, even the young people of a lot of these protests, call them in and meet with them and say, as you organize your events, here's a stack of Black newspapers. Share these with people out there so that they can see where they should get their true source of information from. That's one suggestion I'd make. It is multimedia. One other thing, and Dr. Chavis and I, we talk about a lot of things, but then we get busy. But I'm going to stay on him about this. And I hope he won't mind me saying this, but the NNPA needs its own app too. Because even, let's be honest, y'all, a lot of our seniors are learning how to work these phones too, as much as they like to print, you know, and some of them get mad when we tell them, you don't know how to work no phone. But there ought to be an app for all of our people to go, in addition to the print, they can go on the phone and go to the NNPA app and get all the latest news and information from every city where there's a Black newspaper. And we can do this, y'all. This is not, it's not even rocket science anymore. But if we do that now, especially in this moment of reckoning, imagine how that would lift the popularity, the support, and the fortune of the NNPA. So those are just my suggestions. And I want you to know that I will always be there in service to the NNPA. Like I said, it's where I got my start. I understand its urgency. We have got to support our own institutions.
Absolutely. And Jackie Hampton, I neglected to make this request, but could you pull your chair back some? We're cutting your head off, and we don't want to do that because Jackie, you're gonna have a lot of guys watching, and they're gonna see all of Jackie, not just, you know.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. Okay. How's this?
You're fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
So, did you want to weigh in on that, Jackie? I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off either.
I definitely agree with what he's saying. In fact, I have a great friend from Greensboro, North Carolina, and he tells me that all the time. He writes software. He writes apps, and he's always saying, I want to write an app. I want to do something for NNPA because you all need an app where people can go on their phones and get news and get it quickly and get it from your newspapers. I'll start with the Mississippi Link. And sometimes we just put things off. And so that's why I'm so thrilled to hear that suggestion, because that's something we should do. And yes, senior citizens are more in depth to, you know, what's going on than we want to believe. We want to think that, yeah, they only want that print copy, but they do. They have phones like everybody else, and they can hit an app and get the news, because right now they're having to learn how to go online to go to church. I mean, I've gone to the homes of senior citizens so that to show them how to get Sunday services. And so it's a new day for them because they can't come out and they can't go to the church services, but they can watch it online. They can watch it on their phone. So I definitely agree. NNPA as a whole can make it easier, user-friendly, more user-friendly, I should say, to get the news, not just from one of our papers, but all of the news that's going on throughout the country from our over 200 newspapers.
Yeah, so we
That's
are
what
talking about
I
the,
say. So when people say, hey, you know, where do I go for trusted news? We can say there's a Black app for that.
Black app.
Exactly.
Yep,
Black
that's
app
right.
for that.
We are talking about the future of the Black press. This is our annual conference. This is special this year. It's a virtual uh, conference, and that's obviously because of the pandemic. But this is the 80th anniversary of the National Newspaper Publishers Association and the 193rd year of the Black Press of America. And we invite everyone to stay with us at this conference, because there's a lot of good things that you will find right here on this website. And you will see this throughout the conference. And understand too, as we talk about the future, and we've been talking about younger ones, the NMPA, through the direction of Dr. Chavis and Claudette Perry and our chair, Karen Carter Richards, we are indeed reaching out to younger ones. We had a live stream just last week with the younger generation. Jan Michelle Kearney's daughter was on there, as well as some staffers from the AFRO, and even my 13-year-old daughter, who's writing a food column for
Wow.
the NNPA for the summer. So we are indeed, and that's just a small tip of the iceberg with the young ones. We are certainly engaging the young ones, and it's very important, as this panel has greatly stated. We are rejoined by our president, Dr. Benjamin Chavis. Dr. Chavis, you wanted to jump in here?
Yes, I just wanted to, I've listened very carefully. I want to thank each of our publishers, our panelists, for a great webinar. And we made a list of the suggestions and recommendations that each of you have made. We definitely want to follow up on them. So on behalf of Karen Carter Richards, our chair, the whole executive committee, Dr. Draper is on our board of directors. Jackie Hamilton is also on our board of directors. She's our national secretary. On behalf of all of our officers, we really just want to thank you. And rest assured that the Black press has a great future ahead, a great potential. And I think the insights that you've shared over the last hour will be very, very helpful, not only to our member publishers, but also to all of the intergenerational viewers now that are being with the NNPA, this first virtual conference. I think we have a lot of things to follow up. I just get re-inspired as I listen to each of you talk about what you're doing in your cities and your states, and in social media, as well as in print and online publications. The truth of the matter is there's more opportunities today for the Black press than ever before. And if we work together, as Tapa Karu, who's now working with us, said, you know, a team that stays together is a team that will, in fact, fulfill the dream. You know, the team fulfills the dream of Dr. King and of our ancestors, even before Dr. King. If you read the Black press, what was on the front page of Freedom's Journal is still true today, 193 years later. No one is going to fight for our freedom more than we fight for our own freedom. And it's not something that somebody's going to give to us on a platter. We have to struggle for it. We have to demand for it. And then once we get these steps of freedom on our journey, we have to protect it, to make sure that what freedoms we have are not taken away from us. And each generation has to rise to the occasion. So I just want to personally thank each of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to do this webinar for the benefit of our virtual National 2020 Annual Conference.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.